Praised by the New York Times for his Lisztian thunder and deft fluidity, pianist Paul Barnes has electrified audiences with his expressive playing and cutting-edge programming. He has been featured 7 times on APM's Performance Today and on the cover of Clavier magazine. But he won't be performing tonight. Unless you want to use the Casio. If you want to hear him play, you can come to Concordia University in Seward on Friday, September 27th. There are some flyers back there. He'll be giving a recital on our campus. We have a beautiful piano, and he's a beautiful player, so it would be a nice evening. Rather, tonight he'll be talking about the philosophical concept of beauty, and how beauty, which is so difficult to define and sometimes even to recognize, is a vital part of a musician's life and a crucial gift that we give to our students. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Paul Barnes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent, excellent. It is an absolute pleasure to talk on this particular topic. I titled the lecture after one of my favorite quotes from Dostoevsky. When was the last time you read The Idiot? It's been a while, but it comes from there. But I changed one word in the advertised program. So if you feel like this is unfair, you're welcome, welcome to leave. The advertised title was Beauty Will Save the World, How Our Music Students Can Flourish with a Positive View of Reality. And then after I finished the lecture and figured out what I wanted to talk about and realized, my past work with Liszt, one of my very first projects was Liszt in the Cross, Music as Sacrament in the B minor sonata. So it's this idea of understanding the world sacramentally. So the new title is Beauty Will Save the World, How Our Music Students Can Flourish with a Sacramental View of Reality. So I'd like to open with a quote. Many of you know and have teenagers, and you know that their life has been significantly difficult for many, many reasons. And I'd like to start off with a quote. The question of meaning in life is perhaps the most practical question of all, which I think should be even more apparent in the wake of the modern epidemic of depression and anxiety, to say nothing of suicides and shootings. There is a vast, complicated universe out there. What is its meaning? Whatever your answer, everything else about reality, science, history, literature, economics, we could add music, is bound up in it. That's why it's correct to say that the central issue with which religion is concerned is the nature of ultimate reality. That was from my current favorite book, which is called Journey to Reality, Sacramental Life in a Secular Age, by a new friend of mine, Dr. Zachary Porcu. And it created and gave me this wonderful idea of a reality that was just absolutely filled with meaning and joy. And I wanted to communicate this to my students as well. So I want to basically start this discussion at the very beginning, which of course would be Genesis. We take a look at Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And Genesis 1:10, after God had finished with a big chunk of creation, he said, and God saw that it was good. But in the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament that was done about 300 BC, they translated it, εἶδεν ο Θεός ότι καλόν. Καλόν is the special word because it really translates, and God saw that it was beautiful. And so right from the very, very beginning, in terms of the nature of reality, everything that is created has its own beauty. How many of you have been to our Greek festival? Any of you? Oh, many. Excellent. Yeah, I'm the crazy guy that does the church tours at the Greek festival. It was last weekend. It was insane. We had a lot of TV coverage, and so we had so many people sold out of it. Well, one of the very first things that I do, and I'm the guy that does the church tours every hour on the hour, I am so exhausted by the end of the day. So thank God for Greek beer and mythos. So in any event, I teach everybody how to do the sign of the cross. You know, when I say that these 3 fingers represent God as Trinity, and these 2 fingers represent the human and divine nature of Christ, and that this hand that you're holding, ready to make the sign of the cross, becomes an icon of how God exists. But it's much more than that, because the fact that God exists as Trinity means that God actually is love. Because God, by his existence, is a community of persons that love each other. And then these 2 wonderful fingers down here, because Christ is fully God and fully man, that is our connection. So therefore, humanity and divinity are combined. And so this bizarre separation that we have between the spiritual and the physical is no more. And so we can enter the atmosphere of heaven. So one of my favorite verses, beloved, let us love one another, for God is of God, or for love is of God, and he who loves is from God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So this idea that the very nature of reality is love, and that everything that you see when you walk out of your home, when you take that walk through the garden, it is an expression of love. There's an interesting, now for those of you that are crazy enough to come to my recital on September 27th at Concordia, thank you, by the way, for the invitation. It's very sweet of you. I'm playing a work that I had played here earlier. I don't know if any of you went to the performance where I featured my Native American composer friend, Ron Warren. And I commissioned a work called The Way of Mountains and Desert. And I'm going to be playing a few movements on that recital. But it's interesting because what Ron decided to do perfectly illustrates what I just said about love being the absolute core of existence. So this work that he wrote is based on a composition of his called Love Song for This Earth. And what he did was he took the first 8 notes of the love song, which happened to be da fi da fi da fa dum bum. And he takes those 8 notes, and those 8 notes become the absolute foundation for the composition of all the other movements. So whether you know it or not, it's this idea that love is the foundation of creation. And when it happens musically, as you all know, when you're at a concert or if you're lucky enough to be performing, you can feel and you can sense that in a most remarkable way. So what this does is it leads us towards a sacramental, or you could even say an enchanted worldview. Here's another quote from Zach. This way of seeing the world also changes how you might think about life. If everything has some sort of intrinsic meaning, then reality is less like a collection of objects in space and more like a story, a huge cosmic narrative, rich with themes and bursting with meaning. I want to read one more quote that deals with the element of mystery because how many of you are piano teachers? Okay, well, we're all most of us are music teachers and musicians in some way, shape, or form. So whether you know it or not, you are dealing with mystery every single time one of those little tykes walks in the door, okay? Here's the new definition of mystery. This again is another quote from Zach Porcu. This is the sense in which the early Christians used the word mystery. They did not mean something that could not be known, but something that could be known only by participation, by entering into it and understanding it from the inside, like a marriage, a friendship, or a family. It's no wonder that the term came to describe this kind of religious experience was sacramental, from the Latin word for mystery. This was the heart and soul of the early church and formed the foundation for Christianity in the ancient world. And when you think about our students and our piano students, what excites them is the fact that they are actually participating in a reality that they did not create. And so this, I am convinced, is an unbelievable help, to their mental health. to the sense that they will never, ever feel alone because they're participating in this reality. So anyway, as I was working on all of this, I just realized that, well, wait a minute, I used that word sacrament before, and my doctoral document, billions of years ago, was on religious symbolism in the Liszt B minor sonata. And the title was Liszt in the Cross, Music as Sacrament in the B minor sonata. By the way, if for whatever reason for those of you that still know what CDs are, I did bring some of my recordings, and I still have some of my Liszt in the Cross recordings. It's actually a live recording from my second faculty recital, because I thought I'd get fired if I did this on my first faculty recital. So I'd saved it for my second recital because I had this big giant icon of the Transfiguration on the stage while I played the Liszt Sonata and talked about symbolism in it. That performance and that lecture are available to you back there in the CD table, and I'd be happy to sign that for you. But I went back actually and found a copy of that old lecture. Boy, was that a long time ago. Okay, and I believe I have. Let's see, Calvin's here. Oh, good. He's going to hear about this you'll hear about this in Piano Lit. Okay. For some of the quotes of Liszt, about what Liszt felt about this connection between music and sacrament. This is my dear friend Alan Walker, who I will see in about a month and a half at the Liszt Festival. This is from his first volume, and if you haven't had a chance to read the 3-volume biography of Liszt, you must. You won't be able to put it down. Art for Liszt was God made manifest. It ennobled the human race insofar as the artist was a bearer of the beautiful. He was like a priest ministering to his congregation. I love this idea of the priestly connection there. Here's another one from Walker. Music for Liszt was the voice of God. He often behaved as if music possessed healing properties. Because of its divine origin, he seemed to say, mere exposure to it was a spiritual balm. And that's from Alan Walker's second volume. Now, this is Liszt himself writing about music. Is not music the mysterious language of a faraway spirit world, whose wondrous accent echoing within us waken us to a higher, more intensive life? And finally, art is heaven on earth. Remember those 2 fingers at the palm of your hand? That makes heaven on earth possible. Art is heaven on earth to which one never appeals in vain when faced with the oppressions of this world. So, I have to, at this point, give a little bit of a plug to the Liszt Society. I am the president of the local chapter of the American Liszt Society. You are all free to join. I'm going to be performing a very interesting work. The next conference is at the University of Georgia. Marc-André Hamelin is going to be playing, and Gabriela Montero is going to be playing, and I'm going to be playing. And it was a piece that I would have never chosen myself, but it is actually quite fascinating. It's a prelude and fugue by Zambati, who was one of Liszt's students, who was also a composer. And the great thing about it is, yes, you guessed it, it's based on chant. And would you guys like to hear the chant upon which it's based? It's a very famous chant. It's by Guido. And this is actually the chant that he used to teach his students notation, because each letter of the phrase goes ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And this is how he taught all of his students solfege. And this is actually him about St. John the Baptist. And it goes something like this. Utque ant laxis resonare fibris mira gestorum famuli tuorum solve polluti labiretum sancte Ioannes. So, if any of you have ever solfeged in your life, it all goes back to that hymn. That is the absolute beginning of solfege. So I get to chant before I play, and then the prelude and fugue is really, really great fun. But it's really hard, so I'll be practicing quite a bit until then. But the bigger news is that we are going to be moving into our new music building in May, and so probably in 2027, I will be the artistic director for the National Liszt Conference, again, the festival. And I'm hoping to invite my current favorite pianist, Vikingur Olafsson, an unbelievable Icelandic pianist who is, his very first CD, of course, was all Philip Glass, so I knew there was something unusual about this guy. And he's an absolute brilliant pianist, so we're hoping to have this. So, getting back to the lecture, how does this understanding of reality affect our music students? Well, I can talk a little bit about the 2024 Leeds Center Piano Academy. Many of you guys had students that were there, and it always amazes me that the sense of community that is developed when young people get together, and because they're part of a community, you know, because of they have achieved a certain level of accomplishment. That's why they're there. You know, if they didn't have that level of accomplishment, they wouldn't be able to be, you know, a part of the community. But that brings together students, and we had students, it was such an amazing, diverse group of students coming from all different races, all different socioeconomic economic backgrounds, and they came together and they became this family for this whole week. And so it was a very moving experience for me to see. And then the parents came, you know, on the final recital, and you just see the community that it exists in terms of what the parents have created, that they've created an environment in which their kids can flourish. And so it's this idea that the parents and the students, they know that they are all connected to a reality that is significantly bigger than themselves. It's interesting, getting back to diversity, I wanted to talk a little bit also about the Glencorf School of Music. My students, when they come, they understand that they're not just in a studio, but they are a part of a musical family. I have a very hard party atmosphere in my studio. We definitely get together and have a great time outside. You know, you're all invited if you want to come to my Christmas party. We sing like you can't believe, okay, a group of pianists. But they understand that it's so much more, you know, that because of their interaction with the reality that music brings, it creates a sense of community that simply cannot be created anywhere else. So I want to conclude, because I started the lecture off with Dostoevsky, and I'd like to end with Dostoevsky. And I love Russia. I love Russian music, and I love Russian religion, obviously, and I love Russian writers. And Solzhenitsyn had some remarkable things to say about Dostoevsky. I wanted to start with my favorite quote from Solzhenitsyn from the Gulag archipelago. The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart. And through all human hearts, this line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates within the years. And even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. So this is what Solzhenitsyn had to say about Dostoevsky's crazy idea that beauty will save the world. Dostoevsky once let drop an enigmatic remark, "Beauty will save the world." What is this? For a long time, it seemed to me simply a phrase. How could this be possible when in the bloodthirsty process of history did beauty ever save anyone? And from what? Granted, it ennobled, it elevated, but whom did it ever save? So perhaps the old trinity of truth, goodness, and beauty is not simply the decorous and antiquated formula it seemed to us at the time of our self-confident materialistic youth. If the tops of these three trees do not converge, as thinkers used to claim, and if the all too obvious and the overly straight sprouts of truth and goodness have been crushed, cut down, or not permitted to grow, then perhaps the whimsical, unpredictable, and even surprising shoots of beauty will force their way through and soar up to that very spot, therefore fulfilling the task of all three. Thank you. I wanted I wanted to save just, and I know, did I go, I said 15, right? Okay. If there are any, I wanted to open up just a little bit of time for any kind of questions and answers, since there was a lot going on there. If you have any questions, and if not, we'll continue. Any questions? Yes. Oh, and can you tell me what your name is?
My name is Kate.
Hi, Caden. Hang on, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm going to come down and hear you. Go ahead.
What's the way that we can implement this worldview?
Oh! Caden's question was, what is a way that we can implement this worldview? Okay? So, well, I mean, the worldview that I presented is obviously a religious worldview. Okay? So that would be the first step, is stop being secular. In other words, you have this idea that I talked about, that reality is based in creation, you know, and that creation is based in love and beauty. So it's living in that, you know. So I live it, obviously, by, you know, living the life of a Greek Orthodox Christian, you know, which is very regimented. There's fasting structures, there's lots of wonderful prayer, there's liturgical worship, you know, which is critical, because every time you walk into that setting, you realize, oh yes, this is where my home is. Not the mall, not work, my home is here. You know, and that's why churches have to look beautiful. Like, oh my God, I went into the sanctuary here. It's beautiful. Churches have to be beautiful, because if they're not, you're going to forget who you are as a human being. So, does that answer your question a little bit? Okay. Thank you so much for that. Any other questions? Great. Well, listen, thank you so much. It has been my pleasure to speak with you ever so briefly. Thank you.